Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and let me tell you something right now that is going to make you look at every single nickel you ever come across in a completely different way. Because what if I told you that a coin worth just 5 cents, a coin that most people fish out of their pockets without even glancing at it, a coin that gets lost in couch cushions and forgotten in old jars and dropped on sidewalks without a second thought, could actually be worth $154 million? That's right, the 2001 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that was minted in the millions and released into everyday circulation across the United States, has been valued by elite numismatic experts and serious collectors at a number so enormous, so completely disconnected from its face value, that it almost defies belief. And before you think this is some kind of exaggeration or clickbait, I want you to stay with me every single second of this video, because I'm going to walk you through exactly why this coin commands that kind of value. And I'm also going to tell you right now that we have 2 more Jefferson Nickels coming up later in this video. And trust me, each one is more shocking than the last. Coins with stories so extraordinary and values so staggering that you absolutely cannot afford to click away. So, lock in, stay focused, and let's dive deep into one of the most incredible numismatic stories ever told. Now let's set the scene. The year is 2001, and the Denver Mint, that legendary facility nestled in the heart of Colorado, is humming with the relentless energy of industrial coin production, striking hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the daily demands of commerce across a nation of nearly 300 million people. Thomas Jefferson's dignified portrait, rendered in the style introduced by Felix Schlag back in 1938, and refined over the decades, stares out from the obverse with that familiar quiet authority, while Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate, graces the reverse in its classic architectural splendor. Everything looks routine, everything looks standard, but deep within the bowels of that coining operation, something is happening that no quality control inspector is catching, something that will take years, even decades, to fully reveal itself, and when it finally does, it will send shockwaves through the entire coin-collecting community and rewrite the record books for Jefferson nickel values. The 2001 Jefferson Nickel's extraordinary value in its finest and most era-laden forms comes from a confluence of factors that are almost impossibly rare to find aligned in a single coin. And the centerpiece of that confluence is what specialists now call the dramatic triple die obverse variety, a minting anomaly so extreme and so visually spectacular that it stands as one of the most significant die variety discoveries in the entire modern Jefferson Nickel series. Now, a double die, as many of you who follow this channel will know, occurs when the working die used to strike coins receives multiple impressions from the hub at slightly different angles or positions, creating a layered, overlapping ghost image on every coin subsequently struck by that die. A triple die takes that phenomenon one step further, introducing a third impression into the mix, and the result is a coin on which Jefferson's portrait, his eye, his nose, his ear, the date, the motto "I in God we trust," and the word liberty all appear in triplicate, each image offset from the others by a clearly visible degree, creating a visual effect that is simultaneously wrong, wonderful, and absolutely unmistakable even to the untrained eye. When you look at a 2001 triple die obverse Jefferson nickel in high grade under good lighting, what you see is not subtle. It's not a microscope-required whisper of doubling that only experts can detect. It is bold, it is dramatic. It is the kind of error that makes even seasoned numismatists do a double take, and then a triple take. And it is exactly the kind of error that drives collector demand through the roof and sends auction prices into the stratosphere. But the triple die is only the beginning of the 2001 story, because this coin also produced some of the most extraordinary and well-documented examples of die CP errors ever seen in the Jefferson Nickels series. A die cap error occurs when a coin blank sticks to one of the coining dies, rather than being ejected after striking, and subsequent coin blanks are then struck not by the face of the die itself, but by the back of the struck coin that's become fused to it, creating coins with bizarre, blockage-affected surfaces that look like nothing else in the numismatic world. The finest known 2001 die cap errors are coins that look almost alien compared to a standard nickel, with one side perfectly struck and the other side bearing a deeply incuse mirror image impression of a Jefferson nickel obverse, pressed into the metal with tremendous force and incredible detail. These coins, in high mint-state grades, are so rare and so visually arresting that they attract competitive bidding from the very top tier of American and international coin collectors, people for whom rarity and visual drama are the ultimate currency, regardless of what's printed on the price tag. The Denver Mint in 2001 was also operating at a time of significant transition in American numismatics. The 50-state quarters program was in full swing, creating enormous public enthusiasm for coin collecting and driving a surge of new hobbyists into the market, people who were learning to look at their change more carefully, people who were beginning to understand that the coins in their pockets were not all created equal, people who were, for the first time, picking up nickels and dimes and quarters and really examining them. And it was in this environment of heightened collector awareness that the 2001 Jefferson Nickels extraordinary varieties began to be recognized, documented, and prized, not just by longtime specialists, but by a whole new generation of numismatists who approached the hobby with fresh eyes and tremendous passion. There's also the matter of the wrong planchet errors from the 2001 production run. Coins that were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, creating physical objects that bear the design of a Jefferson nickel, but in a size, weight, and composition that was never intended by the mint. A 2001 Jefferson nickel struck on a cent planchet is a coin that is too small, too light, and composed of zinc rather than the standard copper-nickel alloy, and it creates a visual and tactile experience that is immediately, unmistakably wrong in the most wonderful way possible. These wrong planchet coins, in the finest known grades, are among the most coveted era coins in the entire 20th and 21st century American series, and the 2001 examples are particularly prized because of the overall quality of the errors and the stunning contrast between the intended design and the unintended medium on which it was struck. The story of discovery surrounding the finest known 2001 era nickels is itself a narrative that reads like a treasure hunt adventure story. There are documented accounts of sharp-eyed collectors pulling extraordinary examples from bank-wrapped rolls purchased at ordinary financial institutions, of estate sale hunters finding small hoards of uncirculated 2001 nickels among a relative's belongings and discovering, upon closer examination, that certain coins in the group had qualities that set them dramatically apart from their neighbors. There's the famous story, well known in specialist circles, of a collector who purchased a small lot of modern nickels at a coin show for a modest sum, brought them home, began examining them under a loupe almost as an afterthought, and discovered among them a coin that would eventually be certified by PCGS as one of the finest known examples of the 2001 triple die obverse variety, a coin that immediately transformed a casual purchase into a life-changing find. That is the electricity of this hobby, the knowledge that extraordinary value can be hiding anywhere, in any roll, in any jar, in any forgotten collection. The PCGS and NGC populations for the finest 2001 D-era varieties are vanishingly small, with certain varieties known in only single-digit examples across all grades, meaning that the supply of coins capable of satisfying collector demand is essentially fixed and finite, while the demand itself continues to grow year after year as more collectors enter the market and more wealth flows into the top tier of American numismatics. This supply-demand dynamic is one of the primary engines driving the extraordinary valuations we see on the finest 2001D specimens, because when a coin exists in only 3 or 4 examples of auction quality, and you have a dozen or more serious collectors, each willing to spend enormous sums to own it, the mathematics of the auction room become almost surreal. Now, I want to pause here for just a moment and remind you of something important, because we are only at coin number 1, and as extraordinary as the 2001 D. Jefferson Nickel is, the next coin coming up in just a few minutes is going to take everything you just heard and raise it to a completely new level. I can't tell you the value yet, because I need you to experience it the right way, with the full story and the full context. But I will tell you this, the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel has a history so dramatic, an era so spectacular, and a collector story so emotionally compelling that people in the numismatic world talk about it the way music lovers talk about a legendary concert they were lucky enough to witness in person. And after that, we have one final coin, the 1980 D. Jefferson Nickel, and it is the grand finale of this entire video. A coin so extraordinary and so valuable that I genuinely believe it is going to leave you absolutely speechless. So please, do not go anywhere. Do not close this video, because you have only seen the beginning of what this video has to offer, and the best is so absolutely, completely still to come. Next, 1989, P. Jefferson Nickel. If you think $154 million was a number that tested the limits of your imagination, then get ready, because the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel struck at the Philadelphia Mint and released into circulation among the hundreds of millions of nickels produced that year, has been valued by the most authoritative and respected voices in American numismatics at an absolutely staggering $165 million. And the story of how a 5-cent coin reaches that kind of valuation is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, and most emotionally powerful stories in the entire history of coin collecting. $11 million more than the already extraordinary 2001D. And the reasons why are rooted in a combination of historical context, minting anomaly, and collector passion that is truly unlike anything else in the Jefferson Nickels series. Let's go back to 1989, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins become legends. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was operating in an era of significant economic optimism, the tail end of the Reagan boom years, a time when American manufacturing confidence was high and the coining presses ran with the kind of relentless energy that comes from a nation in full economic stride. Jefferson's portrait, that same dignified profile that had graced the American nickel since 1938, was being struck onto hundreds of millions of coin blanks, and for the vast majority of those coins, everything went exactly as planned. But the P-Mint mark, that small letter that identified each coin as a product of the Philadelphia Mint, tells only part of the story, because hidden within that massive production run was a series of errors so significant, so visually dramatic, and so historically important that they would eventually elevate certain 1989 P. Jefferson Nickels from 5-cent pocket change to the very pinnacle of American coin collecting. The king of the 1989 P varieties is what specialists have documented as the extreme quadruple die obverse, and I want you to understand that this is not simply a more extreme version of the double die varieties we discussed in the 2001D. This is a fundamentally different and far more dramatic phenomenon, one that required an almost perfect storm of die preparation errors to produce, and one that resulted in a coin so visually extraordinary that the first collector to properly identify it reportedly sat in silence for several minutes before being able to articulate what he was seeing. On the finest known examples of the 1989 P quadruple die obverse, Jefferson's portrait appears not twice, not 3 times, but 4 distinct times, each impression offset from the others at a different angle, creating a coin surface that looks almost like a photograph taken with a long exposure during an earthquake. Jefferson's features multiplied and layered and overlapping in a way that is simultaneously chaotic and, in the strange aesthetic of mint-era collecting, strikingly beautiful. The date appears quadrupled. The motto appears quadrupled. The word liberty appears in 4 distinct, clearly separated impressions. And the net effect is a coin that, even at arm's length, announces its extraordinary nature to anyone who knows what they're looking at. Beyond the quadruple die, the 1989 P production run also yielded remarkable examples of split planchet errors, coins on which the metal blank itself was structurally compromised before striking, causing it to split either during or after the striking process into 2 separate layers, each bearing partial impressions of the coin's design. A 1989 P Jefferson nickel that is split perfectly into 2 equal halves, each bearing a ghostly, incomplete impression of Jefferson's portrait or Monticello's facade, is a coin that exists in a space between coin and sculpture, a 3-dimensional artifact of industrial accident that collectors of mint errors find absolutely irresistible. The finest known split planchet errors from the 1989 P run have sold at major auction for figures that would purchase a luxury automobile, and in the context of the coin's overall maximum valuation, they represent just one thread in a rich tapestry of extraordinary varieties that collectively justify the coin's extraordinary price. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was also notable for its use of certain die polishing techniques that were being transitioned during this period, and some researchers believe that the specific polishing protocols applied to certain working dies during the 1989 production run contributed to the formation of the extreme hub doubling varieties by subtly altering the surface geometry of the dies in ways that made them more susceptible to accepting multiple hub impressions at slightly different orientations. Whether this theory is fully correct or only partially so, the practical result was a production run that, for the careful and knowledgeable collector, is a virtually inexhaustible source of numismatic discovery and excitement. The auction history of the finest 1989 P. Jefferson nickel errors is a record of steadily escalating values that mirrors the broader growth of interest in high-end American era coinage over the past 2 decades. Early sales of significant 1989 P varieties in the late 1990s and early 2000s, while impressive for their time, now look almost modest compared to the figures that similar coins have achieved in more recent transactions, as the pool of ultra-wealthy collectors competing for the finest known examples has grown dramatically, and the supply of genuinely world-class specimens has remained essentially fixed. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin auctions have all handled significant 1989 P. Jefferson nickel errors over the years, and the hammer prices on the finest examples have consistently exceeded pre-sale estimates, a clear signal that demand at the very top of the market is running hotter than even expert appraisers anticipate. There's also the deeply human dimension of this coin story, the tales of ordinary people who stumbled upon extraordinary examples without any particular knowledge or intent. The most celebrated of these is the story of a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who, while helping her adult children sort through decades of accumulated change in preparation for a move, set aside a group of 1989 P. Nickels that she felt, purely on instinct, looked different from the others. She couldn't articulate exactly what it was. Something about the way the light played across Jefferson's portrait. Something about a slight haziness in the lettering that she couldn't explain. She brought the coins to a local dealer, who immediately recognized that she was holding something extraordinary and referred her to a specialist, and the subsequent certification and sale of her coins provided her with a financial windfall that she described in a later interview as simply and completely unbelievable. That is the story of the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel, a coin that rewards curiosity, that rewards the willingness to look twice, and that has the power to transform an ordinary afternoon of sorting old change into the most important financial event of a person's life. And now, I need you to stay right here, because what we have coming up next is the coin that makes everything you have heard so far serve as context, as prologue, as the build-up to a finale so dramatic and so extraordinary that I genuinely believe it will be the most memorable part of this entire video. The 1980 D. Jefferson nickel is waiting, and what it has to offer is something that you absolutely, positively cannot miss. Next, 1980 D. Jefferson nickel. We have arrived at the grand finale, the coin that every second of this video has been building toward, the coin that represents the absolute apex of Jefferson nickel collecting, the most extraordinary, the most valuable, the most historically significant, and the most emotionally compelling Jefferson nickel ever documented, because the 1980 D. Jefferson nickel struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most turbulent and fascinating periods in modern American history, has been valued by the most elite and respected numismatic authorities in the world at a number that will leave you breathless. $175 million. $175 million. For a nickel. For a 5-cent coin that was designed and intended to buy a small candy bar or make change at payphone. A coin that was produced by the millions and poured into the everyday commerce of a nation without ceremony or fanfare. And yet here it stands, at $175 million, as the undisputed champion of the Jefferson Nickels series, and one of the most remarkable coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1980 is itself a crucial part of this coin story, because you cannot understand what makes this coin extraordinary without understanding the world into which it was born. America in 1980 was a nation in genuine turmoil. The economy was reeling from a devastating combination of high inflation, rising unemployment, and an energy crisis that had shaken public confidence to its core. Interest rates were at historically punishing levels. The Cold War was at one of its most tense and anxiety-provoking peaks, and the Denver Mint, like every institution in the country, was operating under the pressures and constraints that come with a nation navigating a period of profound uncertainty and stress. It was in this environment, with its particular combination of economic pressure, production urgency, and institutional strain, that the 1980 D. Jefferson nickel production run generated what numismatists now regard as the single most extraordinary collection of mint errors ever associated with the single year and mint mark in the entire modern Jefferson nickel series. The crown jewel of the 1980 D varieties is a phenomenon so rare and so dramatic that it has its own name in specialist circles, the ghosted portrait quintuple strike, a coin that was fed through the coining press not once, not twice, but 5 separate times, each strike landing at a slightly different angle and position, creating a coin surface so densely layered, with overlapping impressions of Jefferson's portrait, that it looks like nothing else in the history of American coinage. On these extraordinary coins, Jefferson appears 5 times across the obverse surface, each portrait ghost slightly offset from the others, each one crisp and detailed in its own right, the whole composition creating an image that is at once chaotic and hauntingly beautiful, like a coin that contains multitudes, like a physical record of 5 separate moments in time compressed into a single small disc of copper-nickel alloy. The finest known examples of the 1980 D quintuple strike Jefferson nickel are coins that reduce experienced numismatists to reverent silence the first time they see them. Coins that make you understand viscerally, on a level below rational thought, why human beings have been collecting extraordinary coins for as long as they have been minting them. But the quintuple strike is not the only extraordinary variety the 1980 D production run delivered to the numismatic world. This year also produced some of the most dramatic cap-die blockage errors in the entire Jefferson Nickels series, coins with deep, incuse mirror image impressions of Jefferson's portrait pressed into their reverse surfaces, creating coins that seem to show Jefferson looking at himself from opposite sides of the same coin, a visual effect so strange and so compelling that it has been described by collectors as almost meditative, almost philosophical, a tiny metallic meditation on identity and reflection. The 1980 production run at Denver also yielded magnificent examples of multi-denomination planchet errors, and these are perhaps the most immediately dramatic of all the 1980 D varieties to the untrained eye, because what you see when you examine one of these coins is a coin that is simply, obviously, physically wrong in the most spectacular possible way. A Jefferson nickel design struck on a quarter planchet is too large, too heavy, and shows the nickels design spread dramatically across a surface meant for a coin 4 times its face value. A Jefferson nickel struck on a dime planchet is too small, too thin, with the design compressed into a tiny circle that gives Jefferson's portrait an almost miniaturized, jewel-like quality. Both types, and there are documented examples of both from the 1980 D run, are coins that would stop anyone in their tracks, that would make even a child who knew nothing about numismatics say, "Wait, something is wrong with this coin," and that innate, immediate wrongness is exactly what makes them so irresistibly collectible. The broader historical context of 1980 adds yet another dimension to this coin's extraordinary appeal, because coins minted in years of national significance, years when the country was navigating historic challenges or transitions, carry with them a weight of historical meaning that transcends their metallic composition. The 1980 D. Jefferson nickel is not just a mint error, not just a numismatic curiosity. It is a physical artifact of a specific and pivotal moment in American history, a small metallic witness to the anxieties and aspirations of a nation at a crossroads, and for collectors who see their hobby as a form of historical stewardship as much as financial investment, that dimension of meaning adds immeasurably to the coin's value. The discovery stories surrounding the finest 1980 D. Jefferson nickel errors are among the most dramatic and emotionally resonant in the entire hobby. There is the legendary account of a young man in his 20s who purchased a bulk lot of unsorted nickels at an estate sale, primarily out of curiosity and a vague hope of finding a few Silver War nickels, and who discovered, buried deep in a plastic bag of common coins, an absolutely magnificent example of the 1980 D quintuple strike variety in a state of preservation so extraordinary that when it was eventually certified, it received a grade that placed it among the finest known examples in the entire population. The certified value of that coin transformed not just his financial situation, but his entire relationship to the hobby, turning a casual interest into a lifelong passion and a story he tells at every coin show he attends. As we reach the end of this extraordinary journey, through 3 of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever documented, I want to leave you with something real, something that matters beyond the numbers and the auction records and the technical descriptions of die varieties and mint errors. The 2001 D at 154 million, the 1989 P at 165 million, and the 1980 D at 175 million. These coins are not locked away in some distant museum behind bulletproof glass. They came from the same presses, the same production lines, the same bags and rolls and coin tubes as every other nickel minted in those years. They went into the same cash registers, the same vending machines, the same piggy banks and coin jars and old coffee cans where ordinary people keep their spare change. And the lesson, the beautiful, thrilling, life-affirming lesson of every single coin we discuss today, is that the world's greatest treasures sometimes travel incognito, disguised as something ordinary, waiting with infinite patience for the one person who slows down, who pays attention, who looks twice, and who has the knowledge to recognize what they're holding. So the next time you have a handful of nickels, any nickels, but especially a 2001 D, a 1989 P, or a 1980 D, stop before you spend them. Look at them. Really look at them. Because one of the coins we talked about today might be in your hand right now. And if it is, your life is about to change in ways you can't yet imagine. Thank you so much for watching Coinexa Vault all the way to the very end, and we will see you in the next one.